Okay, in part 5 of Federalist number 18, we will look at paragraph 8. It says, as a weak government, when not at war, is ever agitated by internal dissensions, so these never fail to bring on fresh calamities from abroad. The Phocians, having plowed up some consecrated ground belonging to the temple of Apollo, the Amphictyonic Council, according to the superstition of the age, imposed a fine on the sacrilegious offenders. The Phocians, being abetted by Athens and Sparta, refused to submit to the decree. The Thebans, with others of the cities, undertook to maintain authority of the Amphictyons and to avenge the violated god. The latter, being the weaker party, invited the assistance of Philip of Macedon, who had secretly fostered the contest. Philip gladly seized the opportunity of erecting the designs he had long planned against the liberties of Greece. By his intrigues and bribes, he won over to his interests the popular leaders of several cities. By their influence and votes, gained admission into Amphictyonic Council, and by his arts and his arms made himself master of the Confederacy. So he beautifully explains how when the Union is weak and something happens, like in this case, a member of the Union was blamed to have done or was accused of having done something sacrilegious, like they had violated either the grounds or part of the holy site, Apollo. Remember, we talked about the Delphi and oracles and things like that. He said because a member was believed to have violated something, done something wrong in the religious side, they had done something sacrilegious, parts of the league wanted to punish that city that had violated the holy site, and they felt like they were being mistreated by the stronger parties. And what happens in this case? You look for anybody to help you, to get you out of a bad situation. Your pride is hurt. You feel like you're being ganged upon. So you reach out for somebody outside, somebody with power, somebody with influence to help you. And he says here that that's exactly what happened. They asked Philip of Macedon to come in and help, and Philip had all along planned for this, was waiting for this, so that he can come in and destroy this union, make it weaker, and after destroying it, he could be a ruler of all these parts. So when he says he gained admission into the Amphictyonic Council, he at first was invited to come in and help with the situation, and then, of course, by his arts and his arms, he made himself master of the Confederacy. With his cunning and lies, and then with the military that he had, he made himself master of this confederacy. He's directly telling the 13 American states that we too, if we do not unite into a strong union, then we've got the French king, the British monarch, the Spanish king, all these monarchies that hate Republican government and will definitely benefit from us being weak. They will wait for us to have a small war between us, and then they'll say, okay, we're going to take sides. And before you know it, just like Philip of Macedon had done to become master of Athens, and he says, these kings of Europe will come to be masters of us. First they come in with lies, and then they bring in their big militaries and become our masters. The next paragraph says, such were the consequences of the fallacious principle on which this interesting establishment was founded. This mistaken principle, this totally wrong principle that they had founded their union. Had Greece, says a judicious observer on her fate, been united by a stricter confederation and preserved in her union, she would never have worn the chains of Macedon. Had Greece united in a better way, they would not have been enslaved and worn the chains that Philip of Macedon put on their necks, and might have proved a barrier to the vast projects of Rome. Because at first, Greeks fell to the Macedonians and Alexander, and again they even got weaker and weaker, and finally fell under the dominion of Rome, as Rome was getting stronger and gradually getting more powerful in the Mediterranean. And he's saying that's what happens when unions are weak. You just become a prey for all these powerful monarchs and kings that are around you, these powerful people around you. And then the next short paragraph says, the Achaean League, as it is called, was another society of Grecian republics which supplies us with valuable instruction. So there is another league called Achaean League, and he says they too are going to give us a good example of what happened to them, what was their weakness, what was their strength, and we're going to learn another lesson by studying the Achaean League. A union here was far more intimate, and its organization much wiser than in the preceding instance. It says Achaeans might have been even wiser. They might have had even a better union than the Amphictyonic one. It will accordingly appear that though not exempt from a similar catastrophe, it by no means equally deserved it. So we're going to see what this Achaean League did, what their mistakes were. The cities composing this league retained their municipal jurisdiction, appointed their officers, and enjoyed a perfect equality. Apparently in the Achaean League, the cities chose their delegates, and apparently they were supposed to be equal on paper, in theory. The Senate in which they were represented had the sole and exclusive right of peace and war. In other words, the Senate was the only place, the only body of people, the only part of the politics and government that decided when they would write treaties of peace or when they would declare war on somebody. Also of sending and receiving ambassadors. They would assign ambassadors. and accept ambassadors from other nations, of entering into treaties and alliances. Of course, they were the ones that would make the treaties, of appointing a chief magistrate or praetor. So they would nominate, or they would appoint a chief, almost like a chief executive or a chief minister. And they would call it praetor too, as he was called. They say, who commanded their armies, and who, with the advice and consent of 10 of the senators, not only administered the government in the recess of the Senate, but had a great share in its deliberation when assembled. According to the primitive constitution, there were 2 praetors associated in the administration, but on trial, a single one was preferred. So it gives you the system of the Achaean League that they had. The Senate was powerful, and they had a praetor or a chief minister, almost like a president or a prime minister, that had certain powers, but he had to work with 10 council members. And they would work when Senate was not in session. The Senate had gone home or was on a holiday or something. So he's telling you all of these to say, yeah, in theory, they were great too. They were supposed to be powerful and not weak. But I think in the next paragraphs, he's going to explain how weak they were and why they were weak.